Hello and welcome everyone to today's development talk titled Using Economic Complexity for Policymaking, the case of Córdoba, Argentina. Dev Talks is a series of conversations with senior policymakers and academics working in economic development. I am Ernesto Stein, a professor of public policy at the School of Government and Public Transformation at the Tec de Monterrey. And I am honored to moderate this Dev Talk, and thanks Andrés Fortunato and Ricardo Hausman for the invitation. I have known Ricardo for 30 years. I was one of his first hires when he built the research department at the IDB and spent a year at Harvard in the early days of the Growth Lab as a Growth Fellow. And in recent months, working with the lab and Andrés and Ricardo on a project in Hermosillo, I have heard Ricardo talk about the mission of the Growth Lab. Ricardo is always great with metaphors, and he relates the role of the Growth Lab to that of a teaching and research hospital. So a teaching and research hospital combines patient care with teaching and training and develops through research new ways to diagnose and treat patients with ailments. And these new methods to diagnose and treat patients are not meant to be appropriated by the teaching and research hospital. They're meant to be shared with other medical practitioners for the benefit of patients around the world. And in the same vein, the Growth Lab trains students and practitioners on how to do policy work and develops through research tools and methodologies to diagnose and treat countries, regions, and cities' economic ailments. The economic complexity framework is one such tool, and it's key to identify new opportunities for economic diversification and growth. And these methodologies help guide the work of a policy of the Growth Lab, but are also meant to be used more broadly by governments, analysts, and practitioners around the world. And today's talk, Using Economic Complexity for Policymaking, the case of Córdoba, Argentina, is an excellent example of the use of this tool by governments and policy practitioners. So it is a great pleasure to welcome today's speakers, Andrés Michel, Secretary of Economic Policy in the government of the province of Córdoba, Paula Luvini, researcher in the data science area at Fundar, and Matias Gutman, coordinator in the productive policy area at Fundar. So I met and worked closely with Andrés and Matias when they were both at the Secretary of Productive Transformation within the Ministry of Production in Argentina during the Macri administration, and I have kept in touch and followed their great careers as they went into the government of the city of Córdoba and then the province of Córdoba in one case and into Fundar in the other. And it was a great pleasure to meet Paula more recently. So Andrés, Paula, Matias, welcome. The floor is yours. You have 20-25 minutes to present, and then I'll ask a few questions before we open it up to questions from the audience. So the floor is yours.
Let me know, Andy, if you can see the screen.
Yes, I can. Thank you, Ernesto. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today, sharing our experience in formulating productive policy, or PDPs, as we call. As we see in the presentation, our PDP strategy makes intense use of economic complexity tool, and I believe there is no better place than the Harvard's Growth Lab to review it and discuss areas of opportunity and improving this tool. So thank you very much for the invitation to present a joint work with Fundar for this sharing space. Next, please. Yes, the roadmap for the day. 4 questions. I will start with the first. Why we choose this economic complexity to guide our productive development? Then how we handle with the data and adapt the methodologies to our reality? What do we find when diagnosing the economic complexity of the province? And then the last question, now what? I will start with why, and then Paula with is going to tell you about how and what. Next, please. Okay, some Córdoba city figures. First of all, Córdoba is the second largest city of Argentina, 1.5 million inhabitants, 40% of the province, more than 600 exporting film, 53% of the province, $2.1 billion of exports, 25% of the province. The province include agricultural exports. Finally, $16 billion of GDP, 33% of the province. Next, please. And the Córdoba's productive profile. The city is mostly specialized on in services. 75% account from services. 25% come from goods. But I have to mention this important thing. The city is the main industrial hub of the province. Maybe more or less 50% of the industrial production of the province is based on Córdoba cities. Next. Well, services and goods. We define two different strategies to avoid this challenge. We wanted to pioneer in PDPs at the city level, so we needed to find vacancy areas in productive policies. In services, we designed a cluster policy with a bottom-up approach in sectors that are mostly productivity enablers, like via BIM technology, translator services, franchising, film, audiovisual, and others. In goods, we wanted to focus on niche sectors. How to find them? This is the question. That is the question. With complexity tools, this is the answer. And finally, why economic complexity? For at least 4 reasons. First of all, time. We need quick wins. Second, soundness. We need to find a tool that converges with the policy making work and academic work. The third, high level support. You need high level support to develop this tool, apply and to find a new opportunity for productivity policies. And finally, a list of partners. You need a list of partners, actors, or to find opportunities to make a table to find vertical public goods, coordination failures, and others. That's all. The first question, Paula.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Andrés. Well, the second question is the how we did it, because the main obstacle that we found to apply this methodology in Argentina was data. Basically, because in the first place, we needed data from provinces, in this case, to analyze the complexity of the province of Córdoba and of the rest of the provinces, and of the city of Córdoba. In the first place, we didn't have, and it is not published, data on exports by province public, so we needed to do a public query with a national agency with whom we worked, and we did an assiduous data cleaning process, because sometimes exports, for example, are wrongly allocated. They are allocated in the port of departure and not in the province, so we had to work a lot on that, but we reached a new database of subnational data of exports at 4 digits. That was the first trouble. The second one was to get information for the city, because as you may know, this is a wide problem. Cities usually lack information of exports on a granular basis, meaning a 4-digit level. And also we haven't explored other methodologies like using employment with economic complexity. So what we did was to work with the data science team from the city's government, cleaning and creating a new database, not of exports, but of companies that exported goods. So the data team scrapped some websites from some agencies of promotion from investments, and we got a new database of companies and goods at the 4-digit level that we needed. So now with that, what we did was to map all the indicators that we calculated subnationally with exports data with the location of these companies. So we reach, for example, we know where the products are in the city of Córdoba and their complexity. As a result, we reach like these two graphs, I think, that show what we found. In the first place, we calculated the economic complexity indicators in the traditional way using exports data. So for example, we found the economic complexity index of all the provinces of Argentina. So in the map on the left, you can see Argentina and the complexity of all the provinces. You can see that in the center, for example, complexity is greener. That means that it is higher. And Córdoba, the province of Córdoba, it is there. Córdoba, in fact, is the 4th most complex province of the country, basically because it exports a lot of automotive parts and vehicles, which are highly complex products. So that was the first part. The second part was, okay, let's match the product complexity index that we have in the traditional economic complexity way with our new database of companies and locations, and find, for example, what you can see in the second map on the right, the product complexity index of the exporting firms in average. So, for example, the capital city, the city of Córdoba, is there in the center. I don't know if you can see it, that square. It's quite complex, which makes, it's remarkable because, as Andrés mentioned, it's specialized in services, and yet it's the 5th most complex municipality of the province. There are other municipalities, for example, Marcos Juárez, which is neighboring Santa Fe. They export a lot of machinery for agricultural processes. So there is a big competition there. So what we did now was to, okay, we have the companies, we know where they are. In fact, as you can see in this map, this is a map of the city of Córdoba, and of the dots are the companies, and the color is the complexity of the product they export. So we know like precisely what they export, the complexity of that product. And we know, for example, we can compare this with the rest of the province. As I was mentioning, for example, the city of Córdoba exports 254 products, and it's slightly more complex than the rest of the province, in fact, with a dot 12 of product complexity index. But we were lacking a way to find the revealed comparative advantages, because as you might be familiar with the economic complexity methodology, the revealed comparative advantages are calculated with exports values, and we didn't have that. So what we did was to do a twist in the methodology and say, okay, we know the revealed comparative advantages of the province by the traditional way, and we know which of these products are exported by the city by the scrapping method. So what we did was, okay, these 30 products which are exported by the city and have a revealed comparative advantage in the province are going to be our revealed comparative advantages in the city. And this is quite important because we needed these values to calculate the rest of the work and also the recommendations. For instance, we needed to calculate the complexity outlook index to know, okay, we know that the city is complex. In fact, it's like more complex than other cities from Córdoba. If we take it like you see in the chart of the complexity index and the complexity outlook index, it is even more complex than other provinces of Argentina. But we need to know, okay, is it growing? Is it going to be more complex in the near future without doing anything? And the answer is, well, not so much, and we need some productive boost because the complexity outlook index of the city is growing at a slower rate, in fact, slower than the provincial average. So we needed to think about apart from all the questions that Andy had, okay, productive policies and how to get there. And we went to the second part of the work, which were the recommendations. Basically, we had the diagnosis, we had the products, and we needed to know now where should the city and the province invest their efforts, in which areas, in which products and goods. So we made 5 criteria to select products. The 3 of them, you probably know them because they are like classic in the literature. In fact, low-hanging fruit, balanced portfolio, and the long jump, they are mostly used in all the papers that come out from economic complexity, which are a weight of the product complexity of the indexes, the outlook gains, and the distance. Those measures calculated, how I told you, using these revealed comparative advantages. And we chose also 2 supplementary criteria, productive path. We wanted to know, okay, there were some products that, for example, didn't have a revealed comparative advantage, but were like really close of getting one, really close of getting there. So we think that those products are interesting. Those are in the productive path. And in the end, in the export recovery, we had all the products that the previous decade had a revealed comparative advantage and lost it. With that, we had 5 criteria and we selected 50 products, 10 of each of the 5 criteria. And we said, okay, is it over now? No, it wasn't, because we saw that we needed some help, particularly from a technical assistance from the team, from Andrés' team, from the government, with whom we were checking some qualitative filters, meaning, does it make sense to recommend to the city to boost this area? For example, one of the recommendations was milk and some corn, and like it makes no sense to recommend to the city, which doesn't have country fields, to do something agricultural. So that was a shining example, but there were some others with which we needed some like knowledge of the field, and it was crucial to work side by side with the government's team in this case. After doing all that like qualitative filtering, we reached a final selection of 28 products, 28 key products that the city and the government should look into. And we went a step more, analyzing them in terms of their similarity in sectors, meaning, okay, these 28 products come from 5 criteria of economic complexity, but we can also see them in their similarities. For example, we have like more or less 9 products of machinery, meaning some engines, some pumps, some machinery for the agricultural industry. And we had other like food and beverages, which is a strong sector already in the city. And we had other, for example, soups, some preparations like snacks, some food supplements. And the third group, which we call others, because it has it's kind of heterogeneous, but mainly it has some chemicals and products. And after we take a look, like a wide look to the onto these groups, we said, okay, maybe we should do a robustness check of whether does it make sense to recommend these products. Do the city have the capability to, for example, boost the products and then to have an advantage there? So we went to companies, which was something that was the way we had to use the methodology, but also a really good outcome, which was we have information about the companies that produce them. So we analyzed 2 cases, interviewing members of these companies that exported 2 of the products that we're recommending, to understand what were these capabilities that they had and why did they have them in Córdoba. So just to finish with this part, I want to tell you about these 2 cases very quick. The first one is pumps for liquids. Pumps for liquids is the product from the first group, the machinery group. It's a very highly complex product. In fact, only 15 countries in the world export this competitively. In Argentina, Córdoba is among the main exporters, although it's not yet competitive. But in Córdoba has 13 companies. The city has 6 companies exporting pumps, and one of them is Venturi, with whom we talked, and we dig into how they get to export. And the main finding, and which speaks about the capabilities, is the partnership with a German company in the late 70s, like more than 40 years ago, where they get the know-how of doing pumps. With that, they specialize, and after 40 years of working on that, today they produce more than 2,000 different pumps, which are really customized. Every client asks a different pump, and they do it. And that was because they were able to learn that, and also to have, for example, professionals who could work here in Córdoba with them, which Córdoba is a great hub of universities, and that also was important. And the second group also had this twist of, okay, food supplements. Food supplements are, for example, some things derived from vegetables and fruits, which are fortified with minerals and vitamins. In this case, we found that in Córdoba, there was a chemical company called Loire, which was exporting cobadenil, which is a food supplement that treats osteoarthritis and osteoporosis. And it's kind of a unique treatment because it uses bovine cartilage and not chicken cartilage, as many other companies use. So they could experiment with that, first of all, because it was allowed to do this in Córdoba, in the country, and second, because they could work with the CEPROCOR, which is the Center for Research and Scientific Investigations of Córdoba. And with them, they developed basically the patent, the method. They could produce cobadenil, and they really highlight that this could have not been done in other provinces because the Córdoba brings the conditions for them to interact with the CEPROCOR and develop these kind of things. And also, for example, to be able to build a new plant. They have a new plant and they need industrial inputs, a local supplier, and they found it in Córdoba. So I think that, and just to sum up and to give the word to Andrés, it is important how capabilities affect these products. And it was really nice to find that the products that the economic complexity methodology recommended to us had capabilities in Córdoba. So it doesn't come out of the blue. And with that, Andy is going to tell you a little bit about the what now, what.
Oh, thank you. And what's next? Scaling up the tool to the province. This project has finished last year, but the team continue at the city working on this project. But now we are in a different policy position at the province level. In charge of PDP is a great challenge for our team. The good news is that the tool is useful for each exporter city at the province. You can see 10 cities, the 10 most important cities of the province. This represents some difference in realities and different in complexity of exported good. I need to remark that the chart considers only products with RCA more than 0.6. Every dot represents the product, and you can see the dispersion between the cities and inside the city. So we need new allies to improve our diagnosis. Those allies are mayors of every city that are being introduced to the PDP framework by our team in what we call productive policy dialogues, where we highlight the value of coordination and public goods. The next. The province already has its own support structure for PDPs. For example, 3 agencies. The first is a competitiveness agency to support all types of firms. Pro Córdoba, the second, to support exporters. The third, the Córdoba Innovar y Emprender, to support the startup growth. The complexity tool, with this tool, we want to introduce a new approach. We want to to go to a proactive strategy, looking to those companies with greater potential to contribute to making the economy more complex. For example, like Paula's mentioning, where we want to reaching out the companies enable us to achieve two important things. The first was understanding the key ingredients for their success, international cooperation in the case of Venturi, and collaboration with the local scientific ecosystem in the case of Fundar. The second was identifying the current obstacles to continue growth. So from the experience in the application this tool in the city, we know that the tool can allow greater efficiency in, for example, commercial missions, identify bottlenecks and needs for sectorial public goods, talent training, standard, and others, prioritizing support for R&D, promoting cooperative innovation, for example. And to close, okay, you can scan the QR to achieve the work. Thank you.
I have a question for you first. So in your work at the national level, I remember that you were one of the people responsible for the coordination of the mesas sectoriales, these productivity sectoral roundtables that bring together the public and the private sector to identify missing public goods and other obstacles to the development of a sector, and then very quickly try to identify and deliver the solutions to these obstacles. So I wanted to ask you, how does the complexity work that you have performed fit within these mesas sectoriales? I know that you have taken the mesas sectoriales to the city government, and now you're also thinking perhaps of bringing them to the provincial government. So how does this work on complexity fit within the mesas sectoriales policy work?
Good question. In my personal opinion, I feel that this tool is in the previous stage. Yes, this tool is useful to identify the sectors. You know, picking winners or not picking winners. Is helpful in that sense to, first of all, to identify a sector with a high potential to export. When you have this information, you can continue with another stage to identify the actors, and then to call for the table and identify failures or public goods and others. I mean, the tool is fits very well with the table methodology.
Thanks, Andrés, and actually thanks to all of you for an excellent presentation. It's interesting to see that you didn't do separate presentations for the government and for Fundar. It's nice to see that you did a single presentation, which shows the level of articulation and collaboration between the government and the team at Fundar, in particular Paula and Matias. So Matias and Paula, how did Fundar develop the capabilities to work on complexity, and how did you come to work on these issues?
Well, let me take this one. We went through this methodology in 2021 when one of our researchers brought in a recent paper of Meli and Teitelbaum on green complexity. At that time, we were working in green industrial policy. So we find very interesting the opportunity to contribute to the debate here in Argentina about the possibility to have both a productive strategy to push or enhance growth, at the same time taking care of the environment. So with this methodology, we find that, for example, Argentina has great opportunities to develop some green products that are in fact very complex and very helpful for our product space. So it was a very fine first experience with the methodology. And then when we felt more comfortable with the methodology, we advanced to some of unexplored areas to apply the methodology in Argentina. Before us, I think no other institution in Argentina previously worked on this methodology, and in particularly at subnational level. So we started by trying to construct all the indicators or indexes at subnational level, and then that was the moment when we the first challenges that Paula already mentioned about the subnational export data. After that, as we are a think tank, we don't do like pure research. We do applied research. So our main goal is always to assess government and assist the policy, assist the policymakers. So we try to make conversation. We started to talk with different governments, institutions, to understand the necessities or what are the main concerns of the potentiality of the use of the methodology. Sorry, that was the moment when we talked with Andrés, and alongside the few months, we like find a good use of the tool to assist one of the main concerns of Andrés in that time, the city of Córdoba.
Thanks, Matias. I don't know, Paula, if you want to add anything. I also have some questions about what you presented, and Paula, maybe you can jump in on this. So I was struck that in your analysis at the subnational level, Neuquén seems to be the province with the highest complexity. So I wonder if you can elaborate on why, what is behind that. And then, so you highlighted pumps as one of the sectors. Typically, this methodology is used to identify products that you are not that are not within your revealed comparative advantage, but that you could develop. But Córdoba already exports, is one of the main exporters of this. So was pumps revealed comparative advantage under one in this case or not? And then you also discussed the fact that while Córdoba is quite complex from a point of view of Argentina, complexity was not growing. And you mentioned the complexity outlook index but the complexity outlook index, as I see it, is a little bit a predictor of future complexity rather than a measure of growth in complexity. So have you also looked at past tendencies, the past evolution of complexity in Córdoba, and also identified that it has not been growing, or is it just that the complexity outlook index is low? So these are a few questions for you guys.
Okay, I'll take the hardest one first, which is maybe Neuquén, because it's still an ongoing work from our side. As Matias mentioned, like we're still working with this. In fact, Now we're trying to use employment. We're analyzing the use of employment to see how complexity outcomes this way. In the case of Neuquén, we think that it is the highest, but it is like it is not very well measured because we have a lot of imports that Neuquén imports things from another country and then it exports, like for example, machinery for hydrocarbons. You have there Vaca Muerta and a lot of new developments with hydrocarbons, and the province imports and exports a lot of machinery. So it is something that we're still working on because we're comparing with other studies that have come out to see how we can clean that. It is the only case where it happened that we did the cleaning and yet it is not 100%. So I think that Neuquén is not so complex, but somehow we can't identify which are the exports that are not exports. In fact, they are imports from another country, and that happens because of the industry there. And then, I think I don't. I'm going to go first with the one from the Outlook Index because it makes me think about this comparison. We haven't published a lot of that yet, but we did analyze, for example, that it's true that the Outlook Index is like a predictor of, okay, you're growing at a slower rate than the rest of the world, or your complexity is growing slower, meaning if you don't do anything, you're not going to be so complex in the future. But we also check that Córdoba and also Argentina, I think Córdoba comes from like a situation of the whole country that lost a lot of revealed comparative advantages in really good products, in products that were really complex. So there was something there that you're losing your capabilities there. Like you maybe for example, we compared it with the 2009 and you had more machinery and now you had less machinery and you have, for example, more agricultural products. You are more competitive in agricultural products. So it was like a combination of both that I think it makes like at least a warning of, hey, you should pay attention here. And about the pumps, no, pumps are not competitive in Córdoba yet, meaning Córdoba, in Argentina, in fact, only one province is competitive, which was Mendoza, which brings us to the same question that we're having, okay, you're not competitive in pumps here, but obviously you have some capabilities. That's why we like the criteria of export recovery and productive path, because although according to the methodology, Córdoba doesn't have a comparative advantage there, it exports the pumps, and Venturi is exporting it to Brazil. So it has capabilities. Maybe they just need a little boost, or maybe it's just bureaucracy, something that is making them not to be competitive as the rest. So the answer is no, they don't have comparative advantages, but they do have a lot of experience exporting.
Thank you. So a question for all of you, and after that I will turn it to the questions from the audience. I think you can write the questions in the chat, and then Andrés Fortunato or someone will read them out loud. So Andrés and Paula and Matias, you have done this great work. Have you showcased this work? Have you presented it extensively within Argentina? Have you identified interest in other cities, in other provinces for this type of work? Andrés, what reactions have you found from other governments when you tell them about what you've done?
Paula, you first, or Matias?
Okay. Yes, we first presented a preview of this work. This work is a series of 3 documents, and we present the results of the first and the second one around a year ago in Córdoba. And after that presentation, many different provinces and other municipalities of Córdoba showed interest in replicate the study, but yet we haven't carried on that. But at the same time, we work with the Ministry of Interior, Interior is the ministry in Argentina which is responsible of the policy between the central government and the provinces. We work with them developing a series of 24 panoramic complexity profiles. That's the name we call them. They are like 12 pages, like diagnosis of the evolution of complexity of each province. It's really like it's a short review with some insights about how is the structure of each province now and what are the different strategies that the different provinces could use to develop some products related to their situation. But that was that work was never saw the light because it was like an interior document of the ministry. That was a shame, but gave us a lot of experience working with the methodology, and that's our experience in this topic.
Andrés?
Yes, we have conversations all the time with others, policymakers from other provinces and so on. But one important constraint is to find properly data, and Córdoba has a differential in this theme. For example, we have a track record from Pro Córdoba that this record is updating all the time. When one company wants to export, Pro Córdoba always has this information in real time. So this is very important to build and to get to apply the methodology to a province.
Thanks. So I will now open it for questions in the chat. I don't know, Andrés, if you want to take over then, and I'll listen.
Thank you. I'm gonna be the voice of the audience. Thank you very much for a very informative presentations. I have a couple of questions that I will paraphrase a bit. I think the first one relates to the core of how we think about the capabilities of the province, because and the question I think relates to how should we differentiate different capabilities in terms of, for example, the value added, for example. So you mentioned the case of Neuquén, that could be a case where if you look only at exports, it would look differently as you look at net exports, for example. Should we differentiate between our export partners, for example? If we think about exports to Brazil, it could be different from another market because maybe of some trade relations that we have with Brazil that we don't have with other countries. So that's kind of the first question. How should we think about different capabilities? Should we treat them differently? The second question relates to the initiatives to attract FDI. So I think that the audience wanted to know a little bit more about, or if you can elaborate on how you approach different companies, or how did you approach investors? And let me add to that question, how should we think about the intensive margin and the extensive margin? So how should we think about capabilities that the province already has, or maybe that it doesn't have a competitive advantage, but that there's some capabilities, as the case you were mentioning before, and how should we think about the extensive margin? So, for example, capabilities that the province doesn't have today, no? And if you can elaborate a little bit more on that. I'm gonna give you the third question, so you can elaborate more. I think the third question relates to add one more layer to the complexity analysis, and thinking about not only taking into account the complexity index for different industries, but also the relatedness density of different industries, to kind of like have the right measure of the risk incurred in the relation to the expected gain of any new specialization. So let me stop there. I have 3 questions. Anybody that wants to take those questions, please go ahead.
Maybe I can start a little bit with the first one. I think that the first one is more about methodology. You can, of course, add. I think that the question referring also to Brazil, should we treat it differently because like it is a special market and everything? I think the answer is customization somehow, and seeing the case of what you want to analyze. That it happened to us sometimes that some provinces or some cities told us like, well, this methodology is not for me because I don't export so much, and that doesn't represent my capabilities in this case. So when they told us that, of course, it's not just the exports, it's that you manage to do it, but there is something there that they told us, you're missing all the, for example, the trade that we have inside Argentina, which is really important for us. Maybe I don't trade with another country, but I do it inside. So for these cases, we thought, well, maybe an approach using employment data is better or fits better, because employment data is about all the production of a province or of a country. It doesn't only consider the trade. So I think that from my point of view, in the different value added, different capabilities and how to measure that, I would consider like customized strategies, because I think that the tool proved to be really holistic, but of course we can make this little twisted using other data, using maybe a group of countries, comparing with just a group of countries. So I would say that to analyze that, I would use customized experiences for each case, because all the provinces are different and all the countries have different approaches.
Yes, I would like to add to what Paula said, that we work a lot in construct some other indicators and indexes to be a complement of the traditional ones of the economic complexity. For example, different indexes about formal employment for the case of Argentina, that has a high informality in different sectors. Some other about the potential markets on the growth, how is grow in the different markets of different exportable products, and others about, for example, gender issues inside different sectors. So we think that aside the capability issue of each sector, how difficult it is for example, city of Córdoba to develop some sector, sometimes the government needs to align other priorities to the prioritization of the productive policy. For example, if the main goal of the province of Córdoba nowadays is to have more formal workers, okay, maybe some sectors are better to address that challenge than others. And we try to complement all the data with the previous analysis of economic complexity to help the policymaker to take that kind of decision, to give them all the dimensions in the analysis. And I think that with all the data, it's easier to them. For example, as Andrés told us a little bit about the mesas sectoriales, to address these issues with the private sector in front of the public sector, addressing specific issues and working on the solution together.
Another question, FDI, you mentioned, Andrés?
Yes, the initiative is about FDI.
Okay, it's a good question. It was the first question when I started this project 2 years ago. We wanted to identify companies interested in Córdoba. So how to find these companies? And the answer was to use complexity. For example, you can identify companies to invest in the supply chain of your companies that with RCA height, or to identify clients or customers abroad, or invite them to invest in Córdoba city. And for the government, it's important to identify what this company needs from the local government or provincial government or national level, for example. Yes. The case of Venturi is very interesting because you have like Venturi, for example, more 6 companies like Venturi here in Córdoba, and you put together. You call for example, for a table, and together identifying failures, needed support, and others. For example, it's important to ask them what company at the supply chain or in the global market is possible to attract or to invite to invest here in the Córdoba city.
I don't know, Fernando, Andrés, Paula, go ahead.
No, I think that we didn't mention about the density that they asked us. And I was like, I mean, we use the relative density, I think, to, I mean, no, we did use it for the 3 criteria of the long jump and the balance and the low-hanging fruit portfolio. Like we weighted there the relativeness density of each product to to Córdoba matrix. So for instance, we saw that food and beverages, of course, was really close to the city because in fact the city was already specialized there. So we had a lot of things that were really close. In fact, we didn't show it, but we had the graphs with the network, and it was really close. And some things from machinery weren't so much, but I think it's important because the comments also mentioned the smart specification, how to break this, not to be specialized in the things that you are already specialized into. So I think that was kind of covered in the 3 criteria, like considering what is close, but also what it is not so close.
Fernando, Andrés, I don't know if there are any other questions, please.
We have 5 minutes, so let me ask the last question. I think it's very interesting because we asked this question also in Buenos Aires when we worked in Buenos Aires. So the question, and I quote, is how are you thinking of this regional work within the context of a volatile national economic situation? Did you address this in any specific way in your work?
When do you say regional work? Are you referring to regional like provinces or regional like countries around Argentina or?
No, I think it means by the subnational agenda that you have, Córdoba in this case.
Well, the macro is a data. We can do anything to change the macro at the local level. We need to adapt to this context. The good news is local governments, city governments or provincial governments, they have enough, maybe not enough tool, but they have to use these tools to identify opportunity vacancy areas and opportunities to attract, invest, create jobs, whatever. In our case, we find that we have a lot of work to do every day. Maybe our results could be higher with a macro or with less volatility of the economy, but we can do a lot of things every day to improve our productivity in the economy. So we have a proactive view of this situation. We can change the macro. We need to adapt to it.
Yes, I would say that sadly for Argentina, the last 10 years, the volatility of the macro is the constant. So, but we think that we can't wait to the time that the macro is solved in order to start to do industrial policy or other activities. So I think this kind of instruments help us to coordinate the existing tools in order to, in the first place, to use efficiently the public resources, to coordinate with the private sector around some strategies or some fixed points about this strategy, and to strengthening some institutions, like, for example, in the case of the city of Córdoba, was the case of Córdoba Acelera, was a public-private organization to cluster different productive activities. So these kind of local instruments are really important to develop the productive sector at local level and to work with the firms at local level. But in the end, you need stronger firms to enhance exports. So that's kind of the potency of this I see in this tool at local level. Sorry, one more thing. And if you apply it, as Andrés said previously, you can identify some opportunities to do some interventions with public goods that are really important to enhance the sector as a whole. For example, some regulations, some infrastructure to enhance the competitiveness of the logistic chain, for example. If you don't know where to look at for this or how to make case of these interventions to other, for example, the governor, you don't have the right evidence to support that claims.
Well, we are exactly on time, so let me thank Andrés and Paula and Matias for an excellent session. Thank you very much. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you very much, Ernesto.
Thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you very much.